Have you ever felt like your thoughts are symphonies while the world insists on hearing jingles? You speak in symbols, feel in fractals, and sense in layers, only to be met with blank stares or polite nods. There's a kind of mind that doesn't just think, it decodes, dives, and dreams in dimensions unseen. This isn't about IQ, and it isn't about quirk. It's about a type of consciousness that Carl Jung once described as the rarest of all, a mind wired for meaning. Jung, the Swiss visionary behind analytical psychology, believed that some individuals aren't simply different in how they think, they're different in what they perceive. He called these individuals introverted intuitives, souls who don't walk through reality, but rather swim through its undercurrents. In modern terms, many of these minds show up as INFJ or INTJ in the Myers-Briggs framework. But this isn't about letters or labels. It's about living in a reality most people will never glimpse. 1. Pattern perception. Beyond the obvious, if you have this mind, you don't just notice patterns, you feel them pulse beneath the surface. While others fixate on what's being said, you're sensing what's not. The tone, the subtext, the future, echoes hiding in the present moment. You hear the spaces between the notes. This ability aligns with what Jung called introverted intuition, a mental function that doesn't follow logic step by step, but makes sweeping, abstract connections. Where others see dots, you see constellations. Conversations become maps. Glances become scripts. History becomes prophecy. Cognitive neuroscience even backs this up. Individuals like you engage the default mode network more often, a part of the brain that supports imagination, internal dialogue, and future thinking. While others process input, you project patterns. What they call gut instinct is for you a refined process, the subconscious assembling a puzzle with pieces no one else realizes are on the table. 2. You see in layers, not labels. To most people, a sentence is just a sentence, but to you, it's an emotional charge, a historical echo, a mask hiding a wound. I'm fine, for instance, is never just, I'm fine. You read the micro-expression that flickered too fast to register. You feel the energetic withdrawal, the emotional dissonance behind practiced words. Jung believed that reality is never raw. It is always filtered through our inner world. If you're part of this rare 1%, then your filter is layered like stained glass, symbolic, emotional, archetypal. You don't just witness life, you interpret it like a myth unfolding in real time. That also means you're often misunderstood. When you bring insight to a table, it's not seen as clarity. It's viewed as overthinking or overfeeling. But you're not looking for drama. You're decoding the symbolic alphabet most people never learned. 3. Drawn to the shadows. Most fear. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow self, the parts of us we repress, deny, or fear. While most avoid this internal cave, you walk straight into it, lantern in hand. You're not fascinated by darkness out of morbidity. You're compelled by a desire to understand. Why do good people harm others? How can love coexist with cruelty? Why does society build masks instead of healing wounds? These are the riddles you chase, not to condemn, but to comprehend. You gravitate toward morally complex stories, psychology, trauma narratives, and true crime, not for thrill, but for truth. You're trying to reconcile paradoxes that others avoid entirely. While many rush to judge, you pause to examine. While others cover, you uncover. And in that uncovering, you bring the unconscious into light. 4. Speaking a language no one seems to hear. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from lack of company, but from lack of resonance. You might speak in metaphors, layered analogies, and emotional blueprints, only to find that people respond to just the surface. Jung called this psychological loneliness, being surrounded by voices, but rarely heard. Your thoughts are multidimensional, yet the world asks for bullet points. You express truth as an ecosystem, but they want a soundbite. That's why group settings often feel limiting, even alienating. You may feel like you have to translate your inner world into a language too crude for its depth. This isn't because you're unclear. It's because your mind operates holographically in a linear world. You might feel most at peace in writing, journaling, or deep one-on-one conversations where nuance has space to breathe. But even then, full understanding remains elusive. You aren't being dramatic. You're simply playing jazz in a world of marching bands. For those who see beneath the veil, life isn't easier, it's heavier. It's not just that you feel more, it's that you carry more. Emotional resonance becomes a constant soundtrack, and silence often reveals more truth than words ever could. You were likely the child who noticed when your parents were pretending to be fine, the one who sensed the disconnection behind the smiles. You grew up reading invisible ink on every surface of your world. But here's the irony. Your ability to perceive more didn't come with the tools to protect yourself. So what did you do? You learned to cope in the only way sensitive minds know, by shrinking, adapting, and overfunctioning. You became what others needed, not what you were. 1. The curse of the chameleon. Because you can read emotional cues so effortlessly, you likely became a shapeshifter. When someone was angry, you softened your tone. When someone was sad, you absorbed it like a sponge. You didn't just mirror emotions, you metabolized them. And in doing so, you disappeared a little more each time. This wasn't manipulation, it was survival. If you sensed instability in the room, you anchored it. If you felt pressure to perform, you morphed into excellence. Your intuition told you exactly how to be what the moment demanded. But over time, this came at a devastating cost. You lost clarity on what was you and what was just a reflection of someone else's needs. Jung warned of this danger. When an intuitive becomes too attuned to others, they risk becoming estranged from their own soul. And once that estrangement begins, it invites anxiety, fatigue, even depression. Because no matter how well you play the roles, none of them fit. 2. The quiet burnout of emotional hyper-awareness. Many introverted intuitives look calm on the outside, but they're burning silently inside. They've trained themselves not to react, to appear composed, even graceful. But beneath the surface is a relentless processing engine, turning every interaction into 1,000 possibilities. You might feel exhausted after social settings, not because you dislike people, but because your nervous system is doing so much work interpreting, absorbing, and self-monitoring. You might replay conversations for hours, wondering if you were too much or not enough. You might need solitude, not for escape, but for repair. But because you seem capable, maybe even high-functioning, no one suspects you're quietly unraveling. The burnout is psychological, existential. It's not just from doing too much. It's from feeling too much and having nowhere to place it. 3. Emotional depth that frightens others. Let's face it, we live in a culture that rewards charm, not introspection. Surface wins, quick wit over quiet wisdom. People are drawn to your insight at first, even fascinated, but that fascination often turns to discomfort once your depth begins to surface. Your questions go too far. Your presence reveals too much. You illuminate the cracks in people's armor, not to judge, but to understand. Still, many can't handle that mirror, and so they back away, sometimes subtly, sometimes harshly. It's easy to internalize this rejection as proof that something's wrong with you, that you're too intense, too sensitive, too much. But the truth, you're not too much. You're simply in a world that's often too shallow. Your presence is a depth charge in a culture of distraction. That doesn't make you broken, it makes you rare. Jung would remind us, what we suppress becomes our shadow. And when society suppresses the sensitive, the intuitive, the reflective, it creates a world that is efficient but emotionally barren. Your presence disrupts that barren norm. 4. The sacred return to your own voice. Here's the turning point. The healing of an intuitive mind does not come from being understood by others. It comes from understanding yourself, from no longer waiting for permission to be as deep, as strange, as sensitive as you truly are. You don't need to dilute yourself to be loved. You don't have to simplify your language to be heard. You don't need to wear emotional armor to survive. You were not designed for surface conversations and polite small talk. You were designed for soul-level connections, for truth spoken through trembling voices, for art, story, silence, and revelation. The work now is integration, to bring your shadow into light, to hold your gifts as sacred instead of shameful, to stop blaming yourself for the loneliness of being unseen, and instead, to build a life where resonance is the standard, not the exception. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to remember who you were before the world taught you to fragment. You were never too much. You are just too true in a world that prefers illusion. So if you've spent your life feeling like you're other, like your way of seeing is strange or unwanted, know this: you are not broken. You are one of the few awake in a world that's still dreaming. Honor that, and don't dim your fire just because it burns brighter than most can handle.